I'd like to talk about a movie called Nightcrawler from a couple of years ago, written and directed by Dan Gilroy. Now, this is the story of an anti-hero named Lou Bloom. He, in the course of the movie, becomes sort of what you might call an attack journalist who joins video crews and eventually forms his own video crew, where they prey on criminality and crime scenes throughout Los Angeles, trying to grab hot video footage that they can sell to news stations. So the question is, how does Gilroy go about introducing this character, and how can he put us in the character's mindset in the course of a few minutes? So he does that very effectively. The first thing that we see is Lou Bloom, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, cracking through a fence outside a rail yard. Now, what does that tell us about this character? Obviously, it tells us that he's a criminal, so right away it tells us that this is not going to be the story of a hero, but rather the story of an anti-hero. But more substantially and thematically, it metaphorically tells us that this is a character who will not let anything stand in his way. He is first introduced literally breaking through an obstacle.
What are you doing out here?
I'm lost.
This is a restricted area.
Oh, I didn't know that. There's no signs.
They're everywhere. Let's see some ID.
Why?
There's a broken gate back there and you're trespassing.
Excuse me, sir. That gate was open and I was under the opinion that this was a detour.
Let me see the ID. Take it out.
What kind of uniform is that?
But this is not a simple transaction between characters that Gilroy unfolds. Quite to the contrary, it's a very complicated transaction. The guard starts asking questions. Who are you? Why are you here? What are you doing?
Here you go, sir. I think what must have happened is I just must have gotten turned around.
Lou Bloom confronts him with these ridiculous pretzel logic answers, and he's also doing something very surprising. He's being nefarious, he's being shifty, he's being evasive, and yet he's also smiling, he's very friendly. Right away, we're encountering the juxtaposition and the contradiction of this character. He lives in the dark, but he acts as if he lives in the light, because in his world, he's the hero of his own story. And yet in our world, he's very much a villain, which of course is the definition of an anti-hero.
The high end or the low end rate? Oh, there's no question. Yes, but 20%.
So in the pilot for the show Lost, written by J.J. Abrams and Damon Lindelof, we're able to get this sense early that our main character, Jack, is the reluctant hero. It really works out perfect to show Jack, who we now rely on as being the main character, as just the guy that's trying to figure out life but also be the hero within the first 10 minutes before we know anything about his history.
Please don't, I'm having contractions.
How many months pregnant are you?
One of the most effective scenes to introduce a protagonist in film history is from one of the best films in history, which is Vertigo, directed by Alfred Hitchcock and written by Alec Capel and Samuel Taylor. And in the opening scene, we see three guys running across the rooftops of San Francisco. A criminal, a uniformed cop, and a plainclothes detective. And the criminal jumps across this expanse between two buildings and makes it to the next rooftop. The uniformed cop jumps, slips, almost falls, but makes it. And then the plainclothes detective jumps, slips, and slides down a steep rooftop until he's clinging to a gutter, dangling over several stories in certain death. The detective is hanging there, clinging to the gutter, and we fade to black. The purpose, if you possibly can, in an opening introductory scene, is to define and dramatize the protagonist's fundamental paradox. Or to put it less elegantly, you're trying to define the character's butt, which is Hamlet wants to avenge his father's murder, but he can't bring himself to take action because he can't stop thinking. In the case of Vertigo, you're talking about a character who's terrified of death, but can't help wondering if he should finally let go and plummet. That's the purpose of an introductory scene, is to define that paradox so that the audience is hooked. And you've got to find out what the completion of that paradox will be.
One of the most famous lines in movie history is, "Fasten your seatbelts, this is going to be a bumpy ride." And that's definitely true when we first meet Walter White in Breaking Bad. He's in the middle of a desert somewhere, we don't know where, he could be anywhere, but just in a desert, driving a beat-up Winnebago. He has dead bodies sloshing around in the back, he has nothing but his underwear on, and he's crashing into this dirt mound. And he takes out a camcorder and one of the guns from a body, and he starts talking into the camera, and he's saying,
"To all law enforcement entities, this is not an admission of guilt. I am speaking to my family now."
So he starts talking to his wife, telling her how she's the love of his life, to his son, and saying how he's, you know, the big man of the house now. And he stops once he kind of collects himself, and then he goes out into the middle of the road in the direction of the sirens, because we can hear police sirens coming at this point. And he points the gun at them, and he's looking at them like, "I am not going down without a fight." What's really unique about how Vince Gilligan introduces his character is that it gets out exposition in a really clever way. Instead of doing some cheap things like, "I am this person and I am that," he says all of that through talking to his family. And so it does show that he's a family guy, he's grounded in that, and that he does care about them.
Skylar, you are the love of my life. I hope you know that.
But that he's getting involved in something that we don't quite know what it is yet, so that there's another side to this character. And so I really like how he does this, because we get to see kind of both halves of who he is. And that's a lot of what Walter is. He's two separate people. He's Walter White, the high school chemistry teacher, but he's also Heisenberg, this meth kingpin in the West Coast.
And I thought, by way of illustration, I talk about Rick in classic film Casablanca. Now, notice when we first see Rick, this gambling hall owner is playing chess, not roulette, right? And he's playing the black pieces. So Rick bets, but he's really a strategic thinker. He doesn't really gamble. He's not playing the odds, he's fixing them, and like an anti-hero would.
Sorry, sir, this is a private room.
And that takes us to Rick's psychological and moral need. The need is something that your protagonist is not aware of.
And if you think I'm going to be kept out of a saloon like this, you're very much mistaken. Excuse me, please.
Hello, Rick. Your cash is good at the bar.
And the need is something that the character is not conscious of early, but the audience, you have to give a hint very quickly to the audience so they know where your character is starting. And that's what's going to set up the character arc in the script.
I've often speculated on why you don't return to America. Did you abscond with the church funds? Did you run off with the senator's wife? I like to think that you killed a man. It's the romantic in me.
It's a combination of all three.
And what in heaven's name brought you to Casablanca?
My health. I came to Casablanca for the waters.
The waters? What waters? We're in the desert.
I was misinformed.
So for Rick, this anti-hero is shut down psychologically and morally. We get this sense that something has happened that's made him very bitter and cynical.
You are a very cynical person, Rick, if you forgive me for saying so.
I forgive you.
Thank you. Will you have a drink with me, please?
No.
Oh, I forgot you never drink with any... I'll have another, please. Yes, monsieur. You despise me, don't you?
Well, if I gave you any thought, I probably would.
Rick says more than once, I stick my neck out for nobody.
Rick, there's going to be some excitement here tonight. We're going to make an arrest in your cafe.
What, again?
Oh, this is no ordinary arrest. A murderer, no less. If you're thinking of warning him, don't put yourself out. He cannot possibly escape.
I'd stick my neck out for nobody.
A wise foreign policy.
But as the screenplay develops, we're going to see that that cynicism masks a wounded idealism and romanticism that's all tied up with Ilsa, the leading lady, and their idyll in Paris.
Where is Rick?
I don't know. I ain't seen him all night.
When will he be back?
Not tonight no more. He ain't coming. He went home.
Does he always leave so early?
Oh, he never. Well, he's got a girl up to the Blue Parrot. Goes up there all the time.
You used to be a much better liar, sir.
Leave him alone, Miss Elsa. You bad luck to him.
Play it once, Sam. For all time's sake.
And the writers set it all up in the beginning of the script via an introduction that includes mystery, the want, and a very strong hint at the need.
Sing it, Sam.
You must remember this. A kiss is just a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by.
I told you never to play.
The opening scene of Lars and the Real Girl gives you the entire story. What do we see? And it's without words. We see our hero, Ryan Gosling, looking out a winter window of a garage he lives in because he's alone. The theme of this movie is, it's scary to love, but we must love. All we see in this scene is him draw his scarf across his mouth, but it tells us everything we need to know about his character. He's scarred, he's wounded. How? His mother died giving birth to him. He is afraid that everybody he loves is going to die. He's terrified. At the end of that scene, his sister-in-law comes out to ask him to come to dinner. The entire arc of the story is in that one scene. She asks him to come to dinner, and he says he will, but he's lying. He won't. By the end of the movie, everyone in that town has reached out to him and used love, and they're scared because he's mentally ill in this movie. They're scared to love him. He loves a sex doll. But the church invites him to church with his sex doll, and the minister after the service blesses her, and so does the congregation, and so does his real girl love interest. By the end of this movie, they have all, as a town, reached out in love, even though they're scared of this crazy guy. They've loved him into him being healed and loving a real girl. That's the story, and it's all in an opening scene without words. It's brilliant.
But there'll never be anybody like her.
Do you want to take a walk?